My polling place out on Long Island, pretty quiet. We're not involved directly with the New York City vote. I understand it was bedlam in the city. Maybe it's not going to break a record for mayoral turnout, but it's going to be more than the recent past, that's for sure. And we'll get into that a little bit because of the communist aspect to it, which is engaging the whole country. Now, tomorrow we'll analyze the results. It's not a lot, and it's not going to be a big lookout. You'll get that phony stuff on cable TV news. Oh, this is a harbinger of the midterms. That's a bunch of BS because so many things are going to change in the next 11 months. It's going to be guaranteed to be startling because President Trump is moving so quickly on so many fronts, and the courts have to issue rulings. And we're going to get into the most important ruling on the tariffs in the talking points memo right now. So the tariffs is a national security situation. It has not been portrayed that way by the corrupt media, but it is. If you have a country that is declining economically, that is a threat to your security. So Germany, for example, is in bad shape economically because of its woke posture and quasi-socialism. The United States is fairly strong, stronger than Russia and China, our adversaries. But if we were to have a recession here, and that, remember, led to the election of Barack Obama, then we would be weakened. So President Trump is determined not to let that happen. And he has instituted these tariffs to stop the federal trade deficit. Now, when I say those words, federal trade deficit, I know you're either going to change the channel or your eyes are glazing over. And if you're older, you may have passed out already. I know how boring this is. I am going to make it. I can't promise it'll be exciting, but it won't be boring. So a trade deficit is when the United States sends more money, corporate money, out than it takes in. And the deficits for us over the past 10 years have been astronomical. So here are the numbers. Beginning in 2017, this is Trump, $552 billion deficit. 621 next year, 617, 679. Okay? So Trump in his first term ran big trade deficits, but nothing like Biden. Biden comes in, first year, 861. Second year, almost $1 trillion, 945. Then 773, then 918 in his last year. Why? He didn't pay attention. Biden could not care less. He wasn't even able to assess those kinds of numbers. But massive amounts of money were going out of the country to our enemies. To our enemies. Biden sent billions to Iran by unfreezing their money, and China was rolling in dollars. So Trump gets back in and goes, I'm going to stop this. And the only way he can stop it is to charge other countries a fee, a tariff, to do business here. Because the United States consumer buys more stuff than anyone on earth by far. Because we got more assets. We have more money. You socialists and communists. We're a consumer-based economy. That means we buy. Companies prosper. China's not consumer-based. Nobody has any money there. They're export-based. So their money comes from shipping stuff here. We buy it, and the money goes back to China, and then they hire another 1 million soldiers. Are we all understanding? I don't think that was boring. I hope it wasn't. All right, so that's Trump's philosophy. In addition, this year, the U.S. Treasury will receive about $500 billion in tariff money. That'll go right into the Treasury. Now, I wish, and if I get to interview Donald Trump, that'll be one of my first questions, Where is that money going to go, Mr. President? What are you going to do with that money? We still have a big trade deficit. Where's it going? Rainy day fund? Are you going to invest? Or what is going on with the $500 billion that you've raised with the tariffs? We, the people, have a right to know that. I don't know it. Nobody's told me. Nobody will say anything. That's not right. Okay. Now, examples of how we get screwed in the trade deficit. So as you know, in May, I was in Japan, China, and Korea. I saw maybe, and I was around, I was moving around. Maybe I saw 10 American cars in the 3 countries. 10. No American cars on the road or trucks or vehicles or anything. None. That's how we're getting screwed. Take a ride on any U.S. highway. Toyota, hello, Mercedes, all over the place. All right. In fact, the United States sells only 5% of the cars that the Chinese people, 1.5 billion, drive. And those are probably Chinese American people over there. 5%. Okay. Japan last year bought 17,000 U.S. vehicles. That was it. 17,000. They're not cooperating by taking our stuff. So therefore, Trump slaps them with tariffs. Do we all get this, please? I don't have to do this again. I really don't. Now, Trump administration is being sued, okay, by the people who hate Trump, the Democratic Party and all their apparatchiks. And it's in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has to rule. Now, they got to rule in Trump's favor. I'm going to prove it to you right now. And nobody knows this because, again, it's too boring for the media to even contemplate this. You know what the Trade Act of 1974 is? I know you don't because I didn't until my crack research staff handed it to me. The Trade Act of 1974, signed by President Gerald Ford, says there are 3 sections. 301 allows tariffs in response to unfair trade practices. Okay? Section 201 permits tariffs if a U.S. industry is seriously injured by surging imports. 122 authorizes temporary tariffs to address significant balance of trade deficits, and it gives power to the president to do all that. Hello? Okay. Trade Act of 1974. Now, the Supreme Court cannot rule that unconstitutional. All right? But it can limit certain parts of it, which it will. But it's going to allow Trump to have a lot of reign in slapping tariffs because the law is already there. If Congress doesn't want the law, pass a new law. Pass a new tariff law. That's what the Supreme Court's going to say. Because the judges, the 9 of them, they're not lawmakers. They uphold what's already been put into the system. So it's almost impossible for me to believe that the Supreme Court will say to Trump, no, you can't have your tariffs. Thank God, because if that ever happened, there would be a severe recession in this country. Now, I'm just going to play you one stupid soundbite from Congressman Jason Crow, Colorado. Okay? Mr. Crow should not be sitting on Capitol Hill. He's not smart enough to be there. Roll the tape.
Well, part of the problem with the tariffs is that Donald Trump is largely using tariffs. I'm glad you raised that because he's actually largely using tariffs to enrich himself and his family, right? They are using the threat of tariffs to strike golf course deals around the world.
That's not true. There's not a shred of evidence of that. So the man goes on CNN or MSNBC, they're both the same, and lies. And the people in Colorado don't care. But there's no evidence that the tariffs are benefiting the Trump family at all. None. We researched it very thoroughly. Now, Norah O'Donnell on Sunday, 60 Minutes, she knows kind of what the tariff thing is. She doesn't know, I can guarantee you, about the Trade Act of 1974. But here's the exchange with President Trump. Go.
What happens to your economic plan if the Supreme Court invalidates your tariffs?
I think our country will be immeasurably hurt. I think our economy will go to hell. Look, because of tariffs, we have the highest stock market we've ever had. Because of tariffs, 401ks at the highest level and this is millions and millions of people that we've ever had, 401ks. I think it's the most important subject discussed by the Supreme Court in 100 years.
But I can tell you the president's pretty confident he's going to prevail here. All right, and I believe he will as well. So, summing up, this is a extremely important story for you and your family, because should the Supreme Court rule, no, tariffs are illegal, the president doesn't have the power to do that, you'll see the stock market down 5,000 to 10,000 points, and it'll be just Armageddon chaos. Okay, a couple of polls and we'll get to our guest. Atlas has the New Jersey gubernatorial race a dead heat. I can't predict this stuff. I mean, I just don't pay close enough attention to the states. I don't have time to do it. Mikey Sherrill, Democrat, Jack Ciattarelli. Looks like Ciattarelli has some kind of momentum here. And if I had a bet, I'd bet on him. Virginia, the Democrat's going to win Spanberger because the Republican Earl Sears is not a good candidate. So Virginia, that's not even going to be close. In New York City, Mamdani will probably win. But he's a communist. So how do I know that? Because, all alone, no, he's not a communist. He is a communist. Now, I was going to run a soundbite, but I'm not going to run it. I'm going to quote it. Okay? So this is Mamdani in 2021 at the Young Democratic Socialists of America conference. Here's what he said. He said, right now, this is a quote, if we're talking about issues that have groundswell of popular support across the country, there are issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, okay, BDS is boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel, okay, or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production, unquote. Seizing the means of production. That is a communist tenet, seizing by force, because regular folks like me are not going to give you my house. So you have to take it. And guys with guns would have to come. That's communism. That's what happened in China with Mao Zedong, in Russia with Stalin, in Cuba with Castro. If you read Confronting Evil, it's a big part of the book, how these communist totalitarians murdered millions, tens of millions of people to seize the means of production. This is what this guy Mamdani is quoting. Yet he may be the next mayor of New York City. Frightening? Yes, it is. Joining us now from the city, Miranda Devine, columnist from the New York Post. The Post has been 100% against Mamdani from the very beginning. Miss Devine has a very popular podcast, Pod Force One. She interviewed a lot of the Trump administration, including the president himself. All right, so look, it's all established that you and your newspaper, and you hate Mamdani, you don't want him, he's destructive, and all of that. There's an old adage that says you hope for the best, but you plan for the worst. You live in New York City, Miranda. Have you made any plans or adjustments of what you might do in your life should Mamdani become the mayor?
Not really. I mean, we've lived through de Blasio when the city visibly went downhill very quickly. And then, of course, the pandemic when it became like the night of the living dead with a whole lot of zombie drug-affected, mentally ill people wandering the streets and a whole lot of inmates released from Rikers Island. And then, of course, we had a whole bunch of illegal migrants placed in hotels all around Midtown. So it's been, pretty willing for the last, almost since I arrived here back in early 2019. So I think that we're expecting, if Mamdani wins, that things will go south slowly. I mean, already the NYPD is a shadow of its former self. You can just tell from the fact that there are so many women, so many small police officers who just stand around reading their phones. Now, Jessica Tisch, who's the very good NYPD commissioner after a series of upheavals, Mamdani was forced into saying that he would probably keep her on, which is one bright spot.
She's not going to stay.
Well, he knows that she's going to be his foe in the next election. So I don't think he's going to want to keep her on anyway. So I'm sure he'll make life miserable for her. And you know, that's the last piece of good news that we have about keeping the NYPD together. And I must say, under Eric Adams, things started to look up on the crime front. But you know, Mamdani is on record. He's pretending now and that he didn't really mean it, or he's changed his mind. And
Yeah. Well, we know that he doesn't want to prosecute criminals because he believes society is at fault, not them. But you say you haven't made any plans or thought about it. So I have family members who live in New York City. And I said, look, if this guy comes in within 6 months, you're going to have a frightening rise of street crime because the people committing the street crime aren't even going to be arrested. I wouldn't be surprised if the 911 system collapses because there's not enough police now. And the police that are going to stay, many of them will leave, are going to be reactive. They're not going to be aggressive. They're not going to be running out there as fast as they can run out there because he's going to have civilian review boards that are anti-police. And if a cop makes a mistake, all right, defends himself or herself, he's right in front of the board. And you can sue the cops if you're a thug or anybody. Who's going to do that? No one. So I'm telling my family members, look, you're going to go out at night. You're going to have to go out 3 or 4. You can't go out by yourself. That's number one that's going to happen. Number two is garbage isn't going to be picked up. Union people are just going to go, you know, every bit of efficiency, and the city is not efficient, okay, is going to go down because this 34-year-old, he doesn't have the organizational capacity to keep it up. It's the largest city in the country, 8.5 million people. All right. And you know who's going to get it worse? The poor. The people who are voting for Mamdani are going to get it the worst. So
they're not actually voting for him. They're voting for Cuomo.
Well, you're going to see
liberal women and young people who are voting for Mamdani. And the majority doesn't want him.
You're going to see immigrants, people born overseas, which is now 50% of the New York City electorate vote for Mamdani. You'll see in the exit polling. Okay, they're going to get it the worst.
1 million Muslims will, yes, because he's gone out to buy that vote.
As a New York Post columnist, and your beat is the city, do you believe that the people voting for Mamdani are stupid?
No, I'll tell you the way I see it. First of all, he's got the Muslim vote locked up because he's appealed to them specifically on identity grounds. He's gone to, you know, mosques and cuddled up with this radical imam who gave character testimony to the blind sheikh who was the mastermind of the first World Trade Center bombing. He's made he's not even bothered hiding his affinity with radical Islam. So that's number one. And then you've got young people. And I mean, in a way, I can forgive them for their stupidity because, you know, they haven't been taught any history. They haven't read your books. They haven't, they've gone to university and been brainwashed. And not only that, as Democrat voters, they have been betrayed. And I don't really blame them for being angry. They look at Washington, D.C. They were lied to about Joe Biden. They see a gerontocracy has taken over their party establishment. And so it's just natural for them to feel they've been priced out. They have this Pied Piper, Mamdani, comes along and says to them, you know, sort of taps into their grievance about the party and says, follow me and I will make your life affordable. And he makes these airy promises. There's no way he can fulfill any of them, but they're angry with the establishment, so they're going to go with a generational part. And then you've got just the crazy rich liberal elite, including a lot of Jews, which, as someone said, is like chickens voting for KFC. But they, are going to vote. The polls show, we've seen interviews with them, I've talked to them. They love Mamdani, and they see him as sort of the antidote to Donald Trump and a reinvigoration of the Democratic Party and the way of the future.
Do you see, and that's a very good analysis you just gave the rest of the nation that doesn't live here, do you see an anti-Trump vote in the New York mayoral situation?
Yes, certainly in that liberal boomer demographic, the wealthy elites. Trump derangement is very strong here in New York. And there's a big cohort of conservative voters, and Donald Trump increased his vote last election. And I mean, every county has turned a little red. And to the point where Elise Stefanik, who seems to be running for governor, she may have a chance where Lee Zeldin did not. But still, the majority, I mean, Manhattan or New York City is something like 70% plus Democrat voters. And I would say, more than half of those are Trump deranged.
Yeah, and the younger ones, of course. All right, Miranda, thank you very much. Nice segment. We appreciate you taking the time. I hope we can talk again soon. Final thought, I'll be busy all night. I'm busy all day. I need a nap. News Nation. Now, depending on how much Cuomo bloviates off the top of the show, I'll be on the lead guest at 8 o'clock. Okay? Then I'm going over to WABC Radio, our flagship, 9:30 with Rita Cosby. The results will be in on WABC Radio. You can listen to it anywhere in the world. Just punch up WABC Radio Live. Boom, you can listen. That's the technology. So I'll be there at 9:30, News Nation at 8. And then tomorrow we'll have analysis of what happens today. Thank you very much for watching and listening this evening. I'm Bill O'Reilly. We will see you on Wednesday. I just got a wire, just came across before I sat down, that a federal judge has thrown out the cases against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Okay, the judge is named Cameron McGowan Curry. She was appointed to the position of overseeing this prosecution. That's not the trial judge, okay, by the Fourth Circuit Chief Justice Albert Diaz. Now, the press is going to make a big deal out of this. It's not that big a deal. So Judge Curry threw it out because the Justice Department attorney prosecuting the case is named Lindsay Halligan. She used to be Donald Trump's personal lawyer in Florida. All right. She took over when the other U.S. attorney for the Eastern District, that's Virginia, said, I can't make a case. But what you need to know, and what is absolutely fair to say, is that all of these judges, Judge Curry, Judge Diaz, who appointed Judge Curry, the federal prosecutor, they're all very liberal people. Now, I can't prove that their ideology has anything to do with this, but, connecting the dots is something that we all should do. But here's something interesting about Judge Curry. She didn't throw it out forever. And the government can appeal. The government will appeal. I think, I'd be surprised, by saying that Ms. Halligan was duly appointed by the Justice Department. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, wanted her. Pam Bondi has the authority to do that. So let's get going, which I think is what's best for America. I understand that this prosecution of Comey and Letitia James is born out of personal animus. That's obvious. Okay? Donald Trump was persecuted by these two people. And now it's payback time. There's no doubt about that. But, big but, they both did things that are wrong. And we've investigated it. So, let's see how wrong. that fair? I think it's fair. So I do expect an appeal by the Justice Department, and Supreme Court might have to hear it. And I'd put it back. Just let the thing go. Let's find out what happened there. Okay, so that's just broke. I'll be on News Nation at 9 tonight. I'm sure this will be a topic of discussion. We'll have more information by then, and we'll cover it in a fair way. But I got to tell you the truth. That whole district down in the 4th, that's full of liberal judges. And this Curry woman was appointed by Bill Clinton. Been around for a long time. But you're not appointed by a Democratic president unless you're liberal. Same thing with a Republican president. You're not appointed unless you're conservative. Or lean that way. It's the way the system works. All right. Donald Trump is going to Florida for Thanksgiving. He'll leave tomorrow. He's got two big things on his plate. All right, the first is Ukraine, more hysteria. We're going to do that in a minute. And then Venezuela, where military action could happen. I don't think it's going to happen before Thanksgiving. I'd be surprised. All right, but it's brewing down there. So let's go talking points memo, Ukraine. Some more hysteria. Somebody leaked out an outline of a proposed peace deal to Zelensky and Ukraine. And it was authored by Americans. I assume they had some NATO input, but I don't know that to be a fact. And somebody got a hold of it and leaked it to a newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, out of London. Whoever leaked it should be charged with the violation of the Espionage Act. And they should aggressively try to find try to do this, because this is bad. So the Espionage Act basically says it's illegal to obtain or disclose information related to a national defense with the intent or reason to believe the information will be used to harm the United States or aid a foreign entity. Well, harm the United States, you could just prove that in 30 seconds by looking at the headlines. Oh, Trump is selling out Ukraine. Oh, this. Oh, Trump is cozying up to Putin. Of course, that's harm for our country all over the world. So the person who leaked it, I hope they catch him, and I hope they charge him. That's just my opinion, but I think it's a grounded in fact opinion. Now, over the weekend, there were actual negotiations between the USA and Ukraine. No Putin. Putin's the thug. You got to understand that. He's just watching back. And whatever the Ukrainians and the Americans agree upon, Putin doesn't have to do it. Probably won't. Just keep that in mind. So they're in Geneva, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio is leading us. And then the Ukrainians have a delegation. Ukrainians come out of the meeting and say, quote, "We appreciate our American partners working closely with us to understand our concerns to reach this critical point. We expect to make more progress." Well, that's good. I mean, you expect that. Ukrainians aren't going to say we hate America at this point. But, you know, it's not the hysteria that the media whips it up to be. Because Donald Trump's way of negotiating, and this is not unique, a lot of people do it, is that you put out an extreme version of what you want, and then you pull back into a middle ground. That's how business people negotiate, and governments too. So all the Daily Telegraph got was the extreme version. They didn't get anything else. And the press just, you know what the press does. Now, Ukraine's in a pretty bad way. Reports say 200,000 Ukrainian men are dodging the draft, and manpower is down big. So they don't have enough soldiers, Ukrainians. They're actually paying some mercenaries over there now. Also, there's a big scandal surrounding a nuclear power company, Energatom or something like that. You remember the Biden scandal with Burisma. Ukraine's a corrupt country. It is. Always has been. All right, a lot of bribes, a lot of money floating around. Anyway, the Ukrainians are investigating themselves, and one guy who is close to Zelensky has fled the country. All right, two others are in big trouble, Justice Minister and the Energy Minister. And allegedly they took millions of dollars to do business with this nuke power company. I don't know. All I know is that Zelensky cannot handle a scandal like this in the middle of a war. And the third thing is Ukrainians can't advance. They can inflict some damage on the Russians, but they're fighting a defensive war. So Russia's not going to lose the territory it's gained already. Ukrainians are just setting up a defensive war, and they're doing the drone thing and all that. It's going nowhere. It's going nowhere. It's just a death field over there. Donald Trump just wants it over. All right? I don't think he's going to sell out Ukraine, but he certainly wants it over. And he's looking at it and saying, Ukraine has got no power at all. No bargaining power. None. It's true. Putin knows it. Okay. Healthcare. Now, this is big for every American. You're paying a lot of money for health insurance. And when you go in and buy prescription drugs and everything else, costs a lot of money, right? And Trump trying to lower the healthcare prices and insurance premiums. If he does, that will help him in the midterms. If he doesn't, Democrats will have an advantage. Simple as that. So right now, there's a lot of negotiation going on. And it is almost impossible to understand it. I've read it 5, 6 times. It has to do with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. It has to do with government subsidies that go into there. It has to do with negotiations with Big Pharma. It's on and on and on and on. So I asked my staff, get me somebody who can explain this so even I can understand it. And joining us now is Michael Cannon, a Cato Institute Director of Health Policy, coming to us from Washington, D.C. So you got a terrible task here, Michael, because I read this 5, 6 times, and I just don't know. But I'm going to ask.
I'm up to it.
I'm going to ask my usual, simple, foolish questions. First question. The Republicans are objecting to extending subsidies for Obamacare. What exactly does that mean?
So Obamacare requires people who enroll to buy a lot of coverage they don't want, requires healthy people to pay higher premiums than is necessary so that they can subsidize people with expensive medical conditions.
Okay, but let me stop you there. I don't have Obamacare. Good. I don't have to enroll, and if I don't want, I can get my own private insurance, correct?
You can if you have an employer who offers it to you, or you can afford it off of the exchanges, but even Obamacare's regulations apply there as well.
But nobody can force you to buy Obamacare and pay their premiums, correct?
Not anymore, that's correct.
Okay. But millions of Americans choose to go into Obamacare, the programs, and they pay more, you're saying, than they should? Is that accurate?
Most people in the Obamacare exchanges pay maybe double what they should be paying because Obamacare lards up their premiums with hidden taxes and mandates that just increase the cost of insurance to them. And
why would they pay that? Why wouldn't they go to another program?
Two reasons. Well, one, there aren't really many other options out there because the government took most of them away. But I'll have something to say about one of those in a moment. And people want health insurance, and Congress also offers people in Obamacare subsidies, massive subsidies, 80% of the premium. You can get a subsidy for this. Some people 100% of the premium.
If you're under a certain earning level, right?
Well, right. But in 2021, Congress increased that earning level all the way up to like $600,000 per year. Those subsidies, though, are going to expire. So right now, people who are paying maybe 0% or 10% of their Obamacare premium are going to have to pay maybe 10 or 20% starting January 1st. And wealthier people earning more than $129,000 per year, maybe up to $600,000 per year, they're going to have to pay the full premium. And that's going to make them mad. And it should make them mad.
Okay, but they can go and buy other insurance if they want to. It's just very hard to find other insurance, right?
Not really, because if you want to get insurance from an employer, great, you can find that, you can do that. But if you want to buy it directly from an insurance company, you have to obey all of Obamacare's rules. And the only exception, really, is a market that Congress exempted from Obamacare. Congress calls it short-term health insurance. President Trump in 2018 expanded the amount of consumer protections that are available in that market. And what we found was that when you exempt people from Obamacare, the premiums end up being 60% lower for most people. The coverage is comprehensive and on some dimensions higher quality than Obamacare, broader choice of doctors.
But there aren't a lot of companies that do that. You got to.
That's right.
How do you find them?
Because, well, they're out there. You know, United Healthcare and Anthem and other large insurance companies offer these plans.
All right, so you got to do some research. Go ahead.
But here's the problem. Is that President Trump made these more widely available so they could last 36 months and provide better coverage that way. But those rules were in place for 6 years when President Biden rescinded them. So right now those plans can only last 4 months. And if you get sick when you're in one of these plans and then it runs out after 4 months, you don't have any coverage and you can't enroll in Obamacare for up to 12 months.
Okay.
So what President Trump needs to do,
I don't want to get too. All right, I got it. So Biden knocked it out, and now it's much shorter. What President Trump wants, according to the dispatches we received this morning, is to extend the Obamacare subsidies, but basically keep it the same as it is now for 2 years. Is that your understanding?
That's what the reports say, but if he extends it for 2 more years, they're basically going to become permanent. They're not going to go away. But he has to stop them now.
But Trump doesn't want to stop them now. He wants to extend for 2 years to get by the midterms next November.
Well, what he wants is affordability. What he wants is to be able to say, hey, I'm making health insurance affordable to you. And all he needs to do in order to do that is tell Congress, I want you to make permanent those rules that I put in place in 2018, giving people access to Obamacare exempt plans. Because then premiums will fall by 50% or more for most people in
So he
Obamacare.
wants to go back to the 3-year window where you can get in there to Obamacare and you won't pay as much.
Well, hopefully he wants to do that, but he's not saying that right now, and his advisors aren't putting that in front of him. He's within like inches of the cup. And all he needs is for his advisors to hand him a putter, but they're handing him a lawnmower with all of these crazy mechanisms that'll
nobody understands confusion. It. Nobody understands it. Okay. Now, the Republican Party in general does not want to expand the Obamacare subsidies that kicked in COVID. They want to go back to the original law. Is that correct?
Well, a lot of Republicans still want to repeal Obamacare, but at a minimum, they don't want to expand it. If you expand it, you get into all these fights over, will the subsidies go toward abortions? Will they go toward gender transition surgeries that are very controversial among conservatives? And they don't want to have anything to do with that.
But I'm more interested in the affordability of it than the ancillary stuff. So right now, you have this confusing battle where Americans are paying a lot of money for their insurance through Obamacare and the others too. You say you can get a better deal. I believe you. But my question is, why don't all Americans then seek the better deal? Are they lazy? Do they not know it's out there?
Well, they can't really get a better deal right now because Biden rescinded Trump's rules. If Congress makes those rules permanent, then
well, give me an example. Right, just go over the rule again that should be made permanent. What's the rule again?
Well, we call it President Trump's 2018 short-term plans rule. And all that Congress has to do is say, look, the short-term plans can last up to 36 months. Your insurer can sell you a renewal guarantee so that it can last even beyond that. You get lower price insurance, better insurance, longer term insurance, and it doesn't cost taxpayers a dime or destabilize Obamacare.
So why don't they do that?
Like I said, the president's within inches of the cup and all he needs is a putter. And this is a much simpler message than what his advisors are selling him. It is a much easier or better way to assuage the fears of nervous Democrats because we had these rules in place for 6 years and Obamacare did not crater.
I got it. Now, Democrats, they don't want any of that, right? They just want to spend more money on Obamacare, right?
But if the subsidies worked, if the subsidies work, then why are Obamacare premiums increasing 26% this year? Subsidies are not going to solve this problem.
Okay, so why are they increasing 26% this year? Why?
Because they created Obamacare, they sent premiums skyward, and if people see those premiums, if they see the cost of Obamacare, they're going to be angry and they're going to want to repeal it. And so this is Democrats' signature achievement from the past 20 years, generation. And they don't want voters to learn just how expensive and destructive Obamacare really is.
But
so
the
they want
voters
to hide
already
those
know
costs.
that, though. They know they're suffering on their premiums because they have to pay out of their own pocket, a lot of them.
Well, they very few of them have to pay out of their own pocket right now. More of them will have to pay out of their own pocket when these subsidies expire, and that's what Democrats are trying to avoid. They want to avoid that price transparency.
Okay. Shouldn't the government just cap it? Just say, look, this is what you got to pay for health insurance. If you're in this income bracket, this is what you got to pay in that income bracket. Isn't that the way to solve this problem?
What the government should be capping is how much the government spends on healthcare, and it should be capping that at zero. If you want to subsidize people, the least destructive way for the government to do that is just to give them cash. That's might work in Medicare. I don't think it's going to work in Obamacare.
So you send them a check? I mean, I know about the Trump wants the healthcare tax-free accounts where you would throw your money into a healthcare account, it wouldn't be taxed, and then you'd build that up to help yourself buy the premiums down the road. I got that. But you were saying the government should send people checks to buy their health insurance?
What the government should be doing with Obamacare is giving people options, alternatives, so that the need for subsidies won't even be there, won't be as great. So because people will be getting health insurance on their own that is secure, that doesn't rely on government subsidies.
But they'd have to order that to take place. The federal government would have to order that to take place.
Yeah, Congress would have to get out of the way of private insurance companies providing people better health care than the government's providing.
And you really think private healthcare insurance companies would be reasonable? Because they're not reasonable in house insurance and car insurance. They're not. They're gouging the hell out of us.
There's a famous health economist at the University of Pennsylvania named Mark Pauly. He says health insurance companies will do anything for money, including being nice and reasonable. And so if you give the money to the consumers, and they have to please the consumers, then yes, health insurance companies will do a better job.
But they're not doing it for home and auto. Not doing it.
Well, there are ways that the government gets involved there as well and reduces competition in the markets for home and auto insurance. But look at auto insurance. I mean, insurance companies have been innovative in both the markets for health and auto insurance by protecting people from their premiums going up after they suffer a loss. That's what they call accident forgiveness. You've probably seen the ads. The same thing exists in health insurance. President Trump did make that available to people, clarified that federal law allows that, but the Biden administration rescinded that, which means that a lot of people are going to face cancer patient premiums when they get cancer instead of healthy person premiums.
It's so confusing. It really is. I mean, it's almost discouraging to the point where the normal, everyday person cannot understand what the deuce is happening. And they can't. So that's where we are.
Gas pumps are confusing to people in New Jersey, but it's not because they're dumber than people in the rest of the country. It's because the government has banned self-service gas stations in New Jersey, so they don't learn how to navigate these issues. People make their own health insurance decisions, and all this will become much simpler, and the population will become better educated about all of it.
I'm with you guys at Cato in spirit. But this healthcare mess, and this needs to be totally revamped, in my opinion. Michael, thanks very much. We appreciate it. I know it's a very difficult subject. Thank you. Final thought of the day. I'm in a car getting driven back from New York City, and the driver, good guy, hardworking guy, says, "Do you know Candace Owens?" I said, "I don't. I never met her." Goes, "Well, I follow her." I said, "Oh, good. She's on the internet." And he goes, "Did you know that Egyptian warplanes were following Charlie Kirk before he was assassinated?" I said, "Really? How do you know that?" "That's what Candace Owens reported on her website." I said, "Oh, did she back it up? I mean, did she have manifests of flights?" And no, she did a lot of research. I said, "Oh, Do you have any idea what that research was or where it came from? No, but it makes sense. This is the driver talking to me now. So Egyptian warplanes, U.S. airspace, were following Charlie Kirk because he has to fly from venue to venue. And I said, let me look at that. Let me check that out. All right. I didn't argue or any of that. Now, I don't know whether Candace Owens reported that or not. I don't know. I know it's insane. So, but I didn't want to make the guy feel bad. But, you know, I understand a lot of this stuff is exciting, this conspiracy. I got it, but you got to live in the real world somewhat. No, Egyptian warplanes in U.S. airspace, they kind of know that. That will get picked up. Anyway, I'm doing all this in the YouTube bonus. We hope you watch it. And then we hope you let me know. Bill at BillO'Reilly.com, Bill at BillO'Reilly.com, name and town of who you wish to opine. Thank you for watching us tonight. We'll see you tomorrow.